try to limit each team to maybe like 12 to 15 minutes per batch of ideas just to keep things moving. So we're going to start with your favorite idea for your animation, and then if we have time, we'll move on to the second, and if there's time, do the third. And just like, again, things to keep in mind, is it obvious like what the robot's goal is? Is it some kind of, engaging or interesting goal? Does it, whatever the robot's doing, kind of feel like it makes sense with the environment, the robot design, like whatever you've pre-established of the robot's character? Concerns about how the robot will look and function, and kind of most importantly for the pitch, I think, are there any sort of plot holes that you see, changes, things that don't make sense, things that might be good to like plan out a little bit better if you want to like use that particular story, etc. The other thing, so I've been seeing a lot of people, just like as a weird disclaimer, I've been seeing a lot of people doing like noodle arms for the robot, which is totally fine. It might look a little weird for IK, so I'm gonna like in the next few days play around a little bit with just like making sure there's a reasonable way to make that look good. And I'll send out my findings in a few days for that, in case that's relevant to people, because it will be a little bit more challenging than doing something with like rigid arms and limbs. But again, I don't think it's like completely unrealistic to be able to do that. All right, so any questions before we just jump into, I'll just kind of go in order, I guess. All right, so Team Elegant Emu. Huzzah. Do you have a preference of a pitch that you wanna look at first?
We kind of like don't have a favorite.
Okay.
If we want, let's just pick a number between 1 and 3.
All right. Well, I'm on 2, so let's do 2.
Okay, let's do 2 then.
Do you want to just give us a quick rundown of like what this, like the basic idea is? Give us kind of like a verbal recap of this.
All right. So what happened is the pitch 2 is idea of like a chase scene through an environment.
Yep.
Whereas a small defenseless robot is being chased by a thug robot, and so we haven't thought of an environment, but we were thinking of like either Creole townhouse a la
Okay.
French Quarter New Orleans.
Yeah.
We were thinking like a cyberpunk alleyway.
That's hella different. I like it.
I know, but this is the range of ideas we're thinking about. And so he chases across the environment doing regular parkour and free running stuff in order to escape for his life. And so eventually the plot twist is that the Killbot actually succeeds, and by mercilessly killing the small robot, and then he turns towards the camera with red menacing eyes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. And I guess concerns, fast movement. I will say before I like get everyone else's feedback, do you guys have any experience with like parkour or know anyone that does? Because you will need to shoot reference for this.
We'll actually have we will have to shoot reference, or can we find reference on the internet?
Ideally, you'd shoot your own reference. But like I guess depending on how the reference exists on the internet, you could presumably like find or like supplement with that, I guess. It might be good though to like play around with a little bit just so you know like what it feels like to kind of do those motions and like see where your body ends up. But yeah, that's my usual.
I'm thinking, I think we're thinking that it won't be like professional parkour.
Okay.
It'll be like loose, like this person is like.
Gotcha. It's kind of like jumping over stuff.
Runt or whatever. Like he's just running and thinking is the best option.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. That makes sense.
I guess we could shoot like somebody haphazardly going over a barrier or whatever. So.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of free running videos.
Okay.
People on that, but,
Sweet.
Yeah, in terms of this, I think you're just mostly thinking fast, like little jumps.
Gotcha.
And everything, so,
Okay.
we could definitely shoot stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think that works. That's my usual just like pitch is like if you're doing like a martial arts heavy kind of thing or like, parkour or some like weird specialized thing is like, do you kind of have experience with that? Because that'll help with making things look good. But cool. All right. So yeah, does anybody have any thoughts, comments on that idea? And also like here's again the robot designs. I like how it's just called Killbot, by the way. He looks so angry. I think this guy's also interesting. He has like a really, really low center of gravity, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so I mean, I guess, and at some point, I will just sort of start randomly calling on people if nobody is saying anything. But is there any point in this where it seems like the little robot will sort of get away? Or is it mostly just sort of like a chase scene with the other guy consistently gaining, if that makes sense?
I think it's like the other guy consistently gaining.
Gotcha. So it might be good, I think, if you want to do this one to sort of figure out how to. There's like two things I would suggest. So one, find a way to make you basically pick sides, either like rooting for the little guy to die or like rooting for him to live. Make the viewer have some kind of thought with them. If it's like something cute they do at the beginning, the robot design, which I do think is charming. And then also it might be good, just so there's like a little bit of sort of like broken up action, to sort of like shake it up a little bit. Because I feel like it's not as much of a twist at the end if the little dude gets killed, if the guy's consistently gaining on him. Like that's kind of what you would expect. So if there was maybe like a way where it seems like he escaped and then like all of a sudden the guy pops up and kills him, I think that would be more surprising and like a little bit more of like, visual flavor is not the right term. I don't even think that is a term, but like I think that would be a little bit more of like a dynamic story plot, if that makes sense. But yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts, comments on this one? I think it's like definitely a workable thing, and I think I like the different environments. I like the idea of like the French Quarter for some reason. I think that's just like cool. But yeah. Cool. All right, you want to move on to just randomly another pitch?
Okay. Well, that's one of those ones that kind of like took over.
Yeah. This is probably my favorite one.
What?
Yeah. So it starts off as like we had the idea of like an Old West but cyberpunk kind of feel.
Okay.
So like having I just really like the idea of like a saloon, like a poker game.
Yeah.
And like light up chips and everything. So these two robots are gonna be playing poker, and then one's gonna be like really losing the game, so they're gonna be like throwing chips and everything. And then one's obviously gonna have more chips, and then he's gonna get really mad and start to like cheat, like he has pocket aces under the table.
Okay.
And then the other robot's gonna notice, and then it's gonna break off into a fight.
Great.
Where it starts into the saloon, and then you see like flashes indoors, and then it cuts to outside, and they do like the classic like robot shootout.
Yeah.
Like the old
Standoff thing. Yeah. All right, cool. And then gun effects. So I think it seems like the way you have this set up, most of the gun effects would just sort of be like flashes of light. So I don't think you'd need anything crazy fancy for that.
Well, you're thinking like lasers? No, lasers or not?
Oh.
We were thinking, yeah.
You could. So I've been pitching lasers and lightsabers a lot, and you could totally just make like a weird cylinder and have it be glowy and emissive, and just move it really fast. Like honestly, I think that would pretty much accomplish what you want for a laser. The shattering glass would be kind of a pain. I can also see handling like the cards again would be annoying. That's a fair point because they're like thin and bendy, so you'd need to figure out like how you want to deal with them. Maybe like play with them early. I always like seeing everyone's Old West robot designs. I think these also seem like they have this guy kind of looks like a pirate almost, but I kind of like it. But yeah, so does anybody else have any thoughts and comments on this? Poker game escalating to shootout. I feel like contextually it makes sense. I am also going to randomly call on a person because nobody is saying things. So,
I have one thing to say.
yes.
The second robot design, I think the hands are absolutely terrifying, and I love it.
It is true. They are like,
Enormous.
they're enormous Edward Scissorhands, spiky like knife fingers. It's amazing. Anyone else?
See that second robot again?
Are the elbows ball joints?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me skip that first because I didn't
This one?
Yeah, though I don't know. We can look at it.
I mean, I think, like, I don't know. These don't have to be, like, super crazy detailed sketches,
Yeah,
but,
that's
yeah, so, I mean, yeah. Any thoughts on the story? Call a random person. Henry? Wait, you literally just said a thing. Hang on.
I mean, I like the idea, and I definitely think it's ambitious in terms of what you'll have to do with Maya. But I trust you guys to do that. So, I think that's kind of a classic Western shoot I've seen.
Yeah. Was that another, like, tentative hand I saw? Or no?
I was just more curious about, so it says in here that the one robot gets shot. Do you plan to like show that like in detail?
I was thinking just like the eye flash, like turns to dark.
Mm.
Because your robot has like the one eye.
Mhm.
I was thinking it just like flashes to the eye. That's just what
I thought your robot died. Wait, I don't remember. Wait,
Either way, I mean, I think it kind of,
It's fine.
they both functionally have one eye.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing is, like, just make sure that this is obvious. I mean, I feel like a stash of aces under the table is, like, pretty obviously cheating. Just, like, make sure if you don't understand poker, like, I have no idea how to play poker, that your story would make sense. But again, I don't think that would be, like, terribly unrealistic for this. And I do kind of like, I kind of like how it just escalates dramatically to, like, a gunfight. And I feel like part of the reason that works is it's like just it is such a classic old Western thing, like you said, and it's just like, it's not as strange feeling, perhaps. But yeah, no, I think this is like definitely workable. I would mostly be concerned about all the things you wrote concerns on, pretty much, because there's a lot of like, again, like sim heavy things in this. But I think the story itself should be pretty straightforward so it would be like, you could sort of devote more time to figuring out how to do the cards or like do glass. You could also try to figure out a way to like cut so you don't need to like show them picking up cards and like having them bend. They just sort of like reach out and then you just cut to like them holding like a flat card, if that makes sense. Because precise grabbing of cards would suck. That'd be really gross. Cool. All right. Pitch number 1, the third pitch we're looking at. Blackboard Learn submits everything in a terrible order. All right.
And so this one is like one of our ideas. Yeah. Sorry. So essentially, the TLDR is 2 lonely robots find companionship through music. So it's
Yeah.
about their love of playing music. And so then there's this lonely robot playing outside this other weird architecture house. Like, I don't know, we're thinking. Fun fact: there's this in Santa Fe, New Mexico. A lot of the buildings are made out of clay, and this is called Pueblo Revival architecture. That's
Interesting.
The more you know.
Eh.
Or we were thinking New Orleans French Quarter again.
Okay.
So he's being sad and playing his harmonica by himself. And so this other robot hears the music, who's a traveling musician, hears the music, and then just like starts trying to locate the source. Then the lonely robot is just really sad. I think what's our back? Like, I was just thinking about it now, and I don't think we have it. Like, what's our backstory? We could have a backstory shown through like the environment of like why he's sad. I don't know. That could be a cool little. No, I just went off a tangent there.
Yeah.
And then eventually the traveler robot locates him, like and then appears at his front gate or door, and then they start playing music together. It's.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Oh shoot.
Okay, so pretty much just like it's basically just like a search with some music, then they find each other and are happy, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And I take it there will be some, like, where would you plan to get the music for this?
We know. I know this one guy. His name is Jeff Nelson. He can play music, right?
Cool.
Yeah. He's published on Spotify.
Sweet. But yeah, I mean, as long as you have like somewhere reasonable to get that, I will say the sort of like note matching would be cool, especially like if you're showing him like playing a harmonica, like actually having him play it correctly. Not that I would know what that looks like, strictly speaking, but like it would be a nice, like, cool touch. It also seems like it might be, if you are throwing any music in, it might be cool to like add some light sound effects in, unless like just, you know, if there's like any major like steps or bangs or like trash cans being knocked over, like that kind of thing could be cool to overlay. I'm actually curious, do you need 5 fingers to play a robot? Or to play a harmonica?
I mean, maybe.
I feel like,
For some though.
Like the minimum maybe 4.
yeah. No, I'm curious. But, I mean, I would look into that because that 5 fingers might actually not be a requirement for that. But,
I can buy a with less than 5 fingers. It's just harder.
yeah. Interesting.
But you need 5 fingers to play guitars.
But, yeah. All right, cool. So, anyone have any thoughts, comments on this one? Do I need to call in a random person? Call in a random person. Isabella?
I think this one could be very somber and romantic. I think it's going to be based mostly on the actual song.
It's true.
I feel like that will have like a big impact on how this turns out. But I'm very interested to see how you make the. I'm interested to see what you choose. I think it's a really interesting concept.
I do like the idea. I had like this sort of like preconceived thing in my head, and you're like, you could make it totally somber, and I was like, you could, and I kind of like that as a thing. I feel like that would make it a little bit different from all of the like other sort of random people meet through music and are happy. You could, and this is like me going off on a sort of tangent, but you could even spin it with like a sad song, and it do one of the things where it like looks like it's happening at the same time, but it's really like the nomad robot is actually like remembering the other one and like going back to their grave or something weird, and they like put the harmonica on it
Oh my goodness,
or
that's
something
sad.
like really depressing. So I think you could take this idea and kind of like use kind of similar shots, but like spin it totally different ways, which I do think is like kind of cool. Anyone else have any other thoughts, comments? All right. But yeah, so I mean, I think any of these would work. I'm kind of partial, I think, to I think it was pitch 3 and pitch 1, because I think, actually no, I think they'd all work, honestly. Just like maybe with the chase scene, see if you can figure out like a little bit more sort of like forcing people to care about the characters, or like give some like more twists in there, kind of thing. But cool. All right. Bagels with eggs. Once I click on you. I thought you would be able to rename these groups, and apparently you can't, so I do apologize for that if you got stuck with a terrible name. Anywho, do you got a preference for which one to start with?
I don't think we'd pick the favorite.
Fair enough. All right, start with this one then.
So this one basically just a robot couple, and they're walking through like theoretically something like a Walmart or a Costco, shopping casually, and then the male robot and the couple wanders off because he sees a washing machine, and he starts flirting with the washing machine, and then the female robot gets aggravated, and then she starts like beating up on him, and then a child robot appears to break up the fight, presumably their child robot, and that's the end of that. So basically just a funny, humorous kind of straight to the point
Gotcha.
story. Yeah.
Um,
And then the robot at the bottom is theoretically the woman, like a New Jersey mom, kind of.
okay, I have no idea what that means. But I do get a certain vibe like from this robot, which I like the design of it. Oh my god. Is there another robot sketch with this one, or is that floating around somewhere else?
I think that's the only one for this.
Gotcha. All right. Cool. So, any thoughts and comments on this story?
I think it's very funny. It's a very funny pitch. And
I
kinda
agree.
look forward to seeing it.
Yeah. I did get a good chuckle when it was like fantasizing over a washing machine. Anyone else? Was that a half hand? Yeah.
Yeah, do you plan on having like a full scene plan out to like make it seem like a Walmart, or just like an electronics section? Like how
Well-
much do you have planned for, like,
Yeah, I mean, I think the concept is that it would be like a Walmart with different aisles, but maybe the one that they're passing through at the time of this encounter is like the home goods section or clearance or something like that specifically.
which one of the aisles has the PPM?
That is not supposed to be in that.
Wait, what is it?
That was supposed to be something.
It's all good. I consider that an Easter egg in the assignment. That's quite funny. That is actually 2 seconds. That is like actually a good point though, because I just make sure that like you could reasonably populate that Walmart. And I know like with a lot of the assignments from like CGI 1 and 2, you can do, or it was like room assignments. So if you have old models from that, like lamps and other weird stuff, and you want to like repopulate shelves with that, or just make like a cereal aisle or something like that would be a really easy way to do that. So you'd still get the sort of like scope of Walmart without needing to make a Walmart. Yes.
Interesting idea. You should have like a child robot be like the spawn of the man in the washing machine, and have them look exactly the same as
Oh,
each
no.
other. It would look disgusting. But it's like, and then you should have the female robot like absolutely destroy the man for doing that or whatever. I don't know. Just a thought that appeared in my head. If you want to go for like the interestingly fantasizing
Yeah.
scene.
Gotcha.
Just an idea. I
Gotcha.
don't know.
Anyone else? Cool. Yeah, so I think I really, really like the base premise of this. I feel like the ending maybe could be a little bit more punchy. Just like it seems like having a child come up and then they just sort of like stop fighting is perhaps not like a terribly satisfying ending. It also does actually mandate that you make a third child robot, which again, totally feel free to do that. Just like you need to model it and rig it and all that good stuff. So I was gonna say like maybe if you could leave out the child robot entirely and like end up having like the guy robot like has to basically make a choice, like does he want the washing machine or like does he want his wife? I do like the idea of like the child walks up and it does kind of look like the washing machine and the wife is like, huh? And gets like really angry. But I think some kind of like more definitive resolution would help this. But I think the base premise is really funny. It also does King of the Hill, anybody? It reminds me of like an episode of King of the Hill. But if nobody watches that, I'm not gonna go into that. All right. Cool. Second pitch.
Alright, so this one is basically just some roommates chilling. One of them is like looking for food in the refrigerator, but he like can't find what he's looking for. So he looks back to the others like where to go, and then they go on this like hunt through the like apartment, like where the hell did the food go? And the twist at the end is that one of them was hiding it the entire time. They like turned to him and he was like eating it. And then the last shot is like of them getting all mad, angry, and stuff at him. So the robot down at the bottom is a Dudebot, basically just a generic robot. I kind of made him look intentionally sort of generic just to make it so that we could use him for any of the 3 pitches probably.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, and required range of motion. I do want to incorporate like eye stakes and eyelids possibly to try and convey facial expression with this dude.
Right.
He does have hands to like open things and pick things up, and shoulder joints for the other 2 bots because it says in there somewhere that they shrug when he asks them where the food is.
Right.
And I just think that'd be kind of funny. One concern is that but
Mhm.
they'll need to go into like a select few areas where they're looking.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of tight shots. And for that much scenery, it might be kind of difficult, but other than that, I think it's pretty doable.
Yeah. I would pretty much agree with that assessment. Cool. All right. So anyone have any thoughts, comments on this one? Yeah.
I guess I'm curious, like, what kind of food could the robots reheat?
I was thinking like motor oil, antifreeze, gasoline, good stuff, you know?
The idea of that in the fridge is really amusing to me.
Yes.
Antifreeze in the fridge.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a hilarious idea. I do like the antifreeze in the fridge bit. Cool. Anyone else? All right. But yeah, so I think this is like also a pretty solid story. I think you could kind of like take the ending and foreshadow a little bit. So maybe decide.
The third guy, I'm not sure if I said this in there. The third guy doesn't get up to search the other two do.
Okay.
They don't immediately suspect him, then they're like, wait a minute. They like hear him like crunching or something, and they turn.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think if you, and this is just sort of like a random general thing, I think if you put audio cues for like one or two things, it would be good to like have other scattered audio cues around, so it's not just like one part with audio.
Gotcha.
It's just like a general sort of preference, but it feels like it ends up feeling more polished if everything sort of has audio than it's like clearly only there for like one reason or like one area. So for some reason when you first pitched this, I don't know why, but my brain like ignored the third robot entirely. So I thought like one of the two searching for the food was like eating it as they were searching and basically just like messing with the other one. And if you did choose to go with that, I was like thinking it would be funny to like do it during this searching montage, like he would be just casually eating the thing like as he's searching, and then the first robot who's not eating the thing would realize that and be like, what the heck, dude? Like, what's wrong with you? But I think it works either way if you wanted to like keep the third robot sort of chilling there. Again, that means you would have to like model and rig a additional robot, but.
So okay, yeah, I thought it was one robot per person in the group. So,
Oh wait, are you a 3-person?
yeah.
Oh, then yes, it is. Ignore me. Sorry, I for some reason did not realize that. Oh, which also then. Yes, don't cut out the child robot then, because for some reason, yeah, okay. Cool. Ignore all my comments about extra robots. And I also said this, I think, in my other 2 classes, but feel free, like, if you guys are welcome to animate each other's robots, so don't feel like if your robot is in a scene, you have to animate your robot for that scene. Like, if there's like a 2-robot scene, like one person can just animate both robots for that whole time. And you can kind of like shuffle things around that way, because I know a lot of people. I think I didn't make that clear like the first class. But yeah, so I mean, in that case, I think that this story like holds up pretty well. Then now that I realize you're a 3-person team, for some reason I think it would be kind of funny if like the third robot, who's like casually eating the food, I'm picturing that he's like kind of like a slob on the couch. Like if he was eating chips, he would have like little chip bits all over him. If he's doing like antifreeze or something, maybe he would just like his shirt would be like stained with antifreeze or something weird. Cool. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments on this one? All right. I think the other one is like more satisfying and like original, but I think both of these would like definitely work. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a sucker for anything that starts with like fantasizing about a washing machine because it's just so weird. Anywho, third pitch.
Basically, the story is that there's a security robot that just shows up at his job during the night shift, and he gets bored because nothing happens at night. But then he starts playing with the ball, and 2 intruders come in and steal the stuff, and then they make their way to the security room slowly by destroying the security cameras without the security bot noticing. And they eventually shoot the security bot, and that's when the scene ends.
Dang. So-
The only concern I have is like how the intruders break in and what type of story I want it to be. To
Mhm.
be because I love the name because it was deciding whether I wanted them to steal like discs so that they can like reprogram themselves to get better, I guess, software. Yeah, the range of motion would just solely be the eyes, and the fact that one of the intruders would be holding a gun, and then of course arm joints because I want them to further express the human feature, and one of them's gonna hold the bag,
Right.
and I just also want, I don't know, I just want that human element to it. The only thing I also have to think about is like what type of security room it's gonna be. I don't know if it's gonna be like a room filled with like entirely monitors and buttons, or just
Yeah.
a room and a desk and it has just a bunch of monitors there. There's not gonna be a lot of crazy animations. There's just gonna probably be like close up
Right.
like a bunch of minor animations. Yeah, and then we can go back to some sketch.
Cool.
I made it simplistic, where I drew inspiration was from the robotics robot. It's Darwin, the humanoid robot.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wanted something simple that can be used in all stories, but also I can change it up however. So,
Yeah.
basically, it can look like a child. Depending on whether I extend the legs or not.
Right.
So it can be used in Isabella's story or Henry's story. And I'm going to try to make it look much closer to Baymax from Big Hero 6.
Gotcha. This is like the pudgiest, like cutest little security bot I've ever seen. I kind of like how he's not like a giant beefy robot. Also, he's the epitome of you had one job. Like you were literally programmed to do one thing. I think that's kind of funny. The end is just shows his tombstone where it's like security bot, you had one job. Cool. All right. So any thoughts and comments on this one? Yeah.
So I was reminded. I don't know if any of you watched Futurama
Hmm.
ever, but in this one episode, I remember there being like a security camera robot whose face was actually like a security camera, and so I'm like, that could actually be like a really interesting design because it covers it. You need one eye.
Mm-hmm.
The lens is the eye.
Right.
Or ability to move. It's just the head. That's the camera. I think that could be a cool little design to add onto your thing. You're a robot as well.
Yeah.
Just to show that it's a security camera droid, security droid.
Yeah. I do kind of like the idea of like playing with the design to have like cameras in them or something like that. It'd be kind of funny. Or like just put like a camera on his face, like a obvious, like I don't know, like the house security cameras or something like that. Perhaps could be like worked into design, but I do think it would be cool, like in general, to maybe like, so like for the first pitch, the robot design was like really obviously like, here is wife robot. I think it would be kind of cool to maybe like tailor some of the robot, like I feel like this actually would be kind of funny in the like security thing, just like have it as an angry robber, but it might be cool to like tailor some of the other robots a little bit more to like a given story. And you can use like the base design or like the base shapes, but maybe make them a little bit more like, I don't know, like you could sort of like tweak this overall shape so it, I guess, either use it as like a child robot or like it kind of does look like a washing machine, or tweak it so it's like older and could sort of function as like the husband robot kind of thing. I think actually I think this design also, or like this story also works. I think what I would suggest is kind of what I suggested for one of the pitches before of, it might be cool at some point, like if the security guard bot notices what's happening, or like do the sort of tropey thing where he like, there's like movement in a camera, and then he looks at it and then like they've already gone kind of thing. So it's like, because I feel like right now there's not a whole lot of conflict happening. It's just sort of like two parties passively doing something until they like suddenly interact at the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like he checks the cameras, but then like since nothing happens, he decides to go get distracted and play with the ball. But in one of the scenes, I plan to have them actually move in one of the cameras.
Okay.
And he just doesn't realize that there's people in the shot.
Okay, so
Still.
he literally just like stares at them like, people destroying things. I'm gonna play with my ball now. Like I kind of like that as like he's just wildly incompetent. The other thing I was gonna say is like there's actually like a lot of apart from the security room, like you would also have to make the scenery for the cameras of like whatever the people are like stealing and breaking into, and that could potentially be a lot of extra work depending on what you choose to like populate shelves and stuff with.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards like just discs. So like
Mm.
a PSP disc.
Okay.
I could just duplicate them and then change the cover of the discs. They'll be like on shelves.
Yeah. You could also do boxes of like maybe sort of like techie looking consoles or something, so it's just like thematically similar stuff, but like different shaped items, I guess. And then also I think the bag might be kind of annoying. I can't think of a great way to do that unless it's like an end cloth bag. And the fact that they're like holding it, interacting it with is like what would make that challenging. But yeah, I mean I think like pretty much any of these stories would work. Cool. Anybody else have any thoughts, comments on these? Questions, etc.? All right. Where are we? Just want ramen? Huzzah! When the button
We
clicks.
don't really have a favorite pitch.
Cool. All right, we'll just randomly start with pitch number 3. All right.
Well, this one is one of the robots goes for an audition for a talent show that he's been watching since his childhood.
Okay.
And he has like an assistant, but when he goes to, I guess, do the talent show, he messes up every single trick that he had planned on doing, and the assistant gives him the wrong objects at the wrong time. He even ends up hitting himself in the face.
Jeez.
One of the objects, and then he walks off stage with his dreams crushed, and that's it.
Gotcha. So is this what kind of like tricks are you gonna have the robot doing?
So we were thinking like magic tricks.
Okay.
Like juggling and
Gotcha. For some reason, I was also picturing juggling being like a funny sort of dynamic thing to have happen. It would obviously mean animating a lot of like juggling balls.
yeah.
So if you didn't like the bouncing ball assignment, but yeah, and this definitely reads a sort of like magician-y kind of fancy character. I guess this is the assistant, I assume.
Yeah.
Cool. He's so derpy. He's like a reindeer TV, and I mean that as a compliment. Are these extendable legs? Like, can he retract his legs?
I hadn't thought about that. That would be really cool.
I mean, I just asked because it looks like obviously you have the ball joint, but there's like these little like things that look like they nest inside each other, which would be kind of funny. But yeah, all right, cool. So anyone have any thoughts and comments on this pitch? Things you think could be like potentially funny or whatnot as like sort of tropey things for the robot to do? Anybody? Call it a random person.
I think a robot hula hooping would be really funny.
A robot.
Hula hooping. Like
Oh, hula hooping.
I don't know why that would be funny, but that would be funny. Yeah, I'm picturing him doing like a bunch of, like I said, I'm kind of picturing like a weird juggling act, and like what happens, can you raise the stakes, or like can you make the ending somehow unexpected? Yes.
You should have like the judge like click a button and a trap door like opens up from underneath the person and he just falls.
Oh God. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, so you could do something like that. I was kind of thinking it might be funny for some reason if like the assistant is assisting him terribly and like gives him a chainsaw. He like just chucks him a chainsaw and he's like juggling. He's like, oh my God, why am I throwing a chainsaw in the air? And like either he throws that at the judge or he like chops his arm off or something crazy. And then the audience is like loving it. So he's like bombing the whole time, but then something catastrophically bad happens and it turns into like really weird slapstick comedy and he ends up getting passed through or something crazy. Obviously I'm not saying like you would have to do that or anything, but like it would be an interesting way to sort of like twist the events at the end and make it kind of like a fun, unexpected thing. But I do think like the basic premise of this definitely works. It would just be good to, obviously to like plan out the routine a little bit more, and like if you go with this pitch, like figure out what kind of like, again, weird tropes that you're gonna do, if you're gonna use any, and like what exactly he's doing. Because like obviously like a hula hooping juggling thing is gonna be way different than like a magic act. But yeah, cool. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments on this one? All right. I do think, and speaking of animating clumsiness, I feel like something about the design of the robots and their like little like bendy arms and legs, I think they both do look clumsy. Like I think the design lends itself well to having a clumsy robot. But cool. All right. Pitch 2. Why does it start so tiny?
Oh, yeah. So this one is like a little nerdy robot enjoying his time at the park, and he's like playing and he's having fun. And then there's another robot who's kind of bigger, he's a bully, like from his visual appearance. And the bully is like looking over at him, and it's to make the audience think that the bully wants to beat up the nerd. So the scene is mainly like the robot playing and like enjoying his time, and then the bully robot is looking at him, and then it will end with the nerd robot sitting underneath like a tree or maybe sitting on a bench and reading a book, and he'll like notice the sun is like blocked out, so he'll look up from his book, and he'll see the bully like standing above him, and maybe he's like going like this with his fist or something, and like making it seem like he's about to beat him, and then it'll like cut. And then it will show the bully and the nerd like reading the book together because he actually just wanted to talk to him.
Gotcha. Cool. And then trembling is like such a pain to animate. It's like not hard to do. I just find it like very annoying. I do think sand for the sandbox is a fair point. You could, for something like that, you could look into particles if you feel like exploding a computer, but probably like soft bodies would be good, soft body dynamics. So you can kind of set it up. And I would play with that early because sometimes I have issues with it. But like basically like if you poke it, it'll sort of like deform. So it's good for like footsteps and snow and stuff like that. Oh my god, it's so cute. I don't know what this is the combination of, but it's very, very charming. Cool. This dude feels really, really top heavy, which I think could be interesting if you like work that into how he moved. Like if he bends over, he would have to like put his foot forward so he didn't just fall over. But yeah, his face looks a little bit like one of the characters from Futurama. I just can't remember his name. But anywho, all right. So any thoughts, comments on this one? Anybody? I'm calling on a random person. Wait, Chris, you've been saying a bunch of things. Hannah?
Hello.
Hello.
So, I feel like you could do cool things with not necessarily lighting, but like framing in order to make it seem like the one robot is like going to bully the other. Like, have everything from the bully with like a low angle that makes him seem bigger and intimidating. And stuff like that. So, like, if it's just like normal camera angles, it'll probably just look like a robot that's coming over to say hi. So, if you really want to get that across and don't use like words or actions really, then I would use camera. I like that.
Yeah, I do agree. That's a good suggestion. Anyone else? Yeah.
One thing I noticed is that only one of the robots actually walks in this.
Mm-hmm.
You really need to think about like how the design can work so that the people are with equal amounts. Oh, both robots will walk, yeah.
One of them is playing in the beginning.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I was reading that one.
Yeah. strictly speaking, I kind of actually don't care if both robots are walking. I mean, I think it would be good just to like practice like using a different sort of weight of character and like different character design, show your rigs work. But again, you can swap characters. So if only one character is walking, as long as you both take some of that walk cycle, I think like that is reasonable. But yeah, cool. Any other thoughts, comments? All right. Yeah, I mean, I think this one also works. I do kind of like the idea that like the bully robot just wants a friend. I think one thing I would maybe make sure of or like consider is ways to make him seem threatening that could be like misconstrued, if that makes sense. So like camera angles is definitely a good suggestion to like make him seem really intimidating. But if he just wants to read, it seems like it would be weird where he would like come over and like do the like fist slapping thing. So I mean, you could do instead like he just like looms over the other character ominously, and then he like maybe he like sits down really heavily, and like that could totally be interpreted as threatening, but he really is just like, I just want to read your book. Or he might do something where it's like, come with me, and do like something that again could be construed as like, come with me so I can beat the crap out of you, but he's really like, hey, let us go find a place under a glorious tree that we may read together.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that would be kind of like cool, because then if you, when you like look back and think on it, you're like, oh, he was just being awkward.
Yeah.
Very awkward. But you know, I mean, I like the idea. I think you could also kind of get away if you didn't want to like have anyone like playing in the sandbox and like interacting with the sand. You could totally just like texture sand, and that would be like easy enough. You could just have them like swinging on swings or something would be probably simpler.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other thoughts, comments on this one? All right, moving right along to story pitch 1, which again, Blackboard Learn for some reason always puts at the end. All right.
So this one, it's an older robot, and he's kind of like lost in life. So he decides that he wants to go visit his childhood home, which he was kind of like forced out of with his family a long time ago. So when he gets there, he realizes that the door is unlocked. So he steps in, and he just like looks around, picks up an old picture frame of him and his family. He notices that everything was basically the same as it was when they were first forced to leave. And so like he goes through all the cabinets and sits on his favorite chair and goes to his bedroom and all that stuff. And then the other robot is a younger version of him, and it's kind of like every time he like does something, there's a flashback of the little kid just running around or just jumping into his favorite chair, or playing in his room and stuff. And then he ends up leaving with the picture frame in his hand.
Okay. Cool. And then let's see how. Just cover everything in sepia and grain for the flashbacks. I say that you could totally do that. I feel like there's kind of like cringy at this point, but yeah, I mean, I feel like sort of. Shush. I feel were you sort of shooting for like how to make it obvious it is a flashback, or what were you meaning by this, if that makes sense?
Like yeah, like I don't know, kind of like a shadowy version of him.
Okay.
Just like doing things that he used to do in the
Okay. So it's more like how to represent a flashback and not like what he's doing in the flashbacks.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, anyone have thoughts on that?
Have you ever seen Moana? Yeah?
Wait, sorry, which one?
Have you ever seen Moana?
Yes.
So, spoiler alert, the movie's been out for like 3 years.
Yeah.
Sorry. At the very, near the end of the near the end of the movie, Moana's grandmother comes back and then all the boats come by and it's like a kind of like the past coming in with the present. And how they did it was like with they had the blue ghosty particles, and I think that could be like a really, not particles,
Yeah.
but like if you don't want to go do that, but like I think that's like a really cool thing. Like instead of having separate scenes for flashback and present, you could have them converging in the same shot and just do some trick with lighting and
Yeah, I think it's what you're
ghosting
going for,
or
too.
whatever.
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty cool.
Like that conversion.
I think that's actually might not even be a terrible thing to do, because you could animate the second, or like the little the flashback robot and render it separately so that you can just like comp him on top and make him partially transparent. And then you can make his entire body emissive, or like emit particles. So if you wanted like little glowy particles like trailing off of this dude, just cover his whole body in particles. Don't use like a lot of them because it'll blow up your computer. But you can texture them so that the particles are also emissive and glowy. So that actually might be a reasonable way to handle that if you like that. I do kind of like the idea of like having them in the same scene. You can do the thing maybe where like young robot like runs in joyfully and the old one is like, "Wah," and like takes a step back as he remembers, kind of thing, to like move for the other one. Or something. I will say passing them through each other is probably just like a pain, but yeah, I like that idea. Anyone else have any ideas? Cool. But yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something to think about. I think pretty much anything would work. There is more elegant ways than just like putting sepia on everything, like I sort of satirically suggested. But yeah, definitely is a lot of scenery. Dust you could actually conceivably do procedurally, with the, somewhere in my giant mess of class recordings, I have like tutorials about how to layer dust on like only the top of things. So that might be something to look into. And then the other thing I was going to suggest is like just make it, and I think you've done a pretty good job here of like, this is pretty much just like a younger, pudgier version of like this older robot. But one thing you could do maybe to ensure, if you're really looking for it, that people realize like this is the same robot and not like two different ones of the same model, is put like a serial number or something on it and like have it so it's like the same serial number and now it's like all worn off and like old, just in case there's like any ambiguity. It's not like a really obnoxious thing, but it's just sort of like there if people are picking for it. The other thing I would also say is it might be cool if, I guess, the robot has some kind of like reaction or like change of state. Like it seems like he sort of like comes in and is reminiscing and is sad, and he kind of leaves perhaps slightly less sad with like a picture of his family. But like, does he do anything significant while he's there, if that makes sense? Like, is there, like, he takes this picture of his family, but is there anything maybe that was like a memento from his childhood that he like decides to leave for some reason, or something like that? More dramatically, does he like burn down the house to move on, which doesn't fit with the rest of your story at all, but like as an extreme example. But I think like tell some story with the flashbacks he's having. Like maybe they're all relating to sort of like his mother robot was like sick for some reason and he was like happy and playing, and then she kind of like gets sick and then she like dies and then he's like sad or something. So like whatever thing happens to him at the end could be, related to that. Maybe the picture of his family is like a picture of him and his mother, that he had to like leave the house suddenly for some reason, which could also be like a little flashback, and he like didn't get a chance to take anything, so now he like comes back and get closure or something like that, if that makes sense. But I think like really make the viewer like understand his story and like why he's there and what he gets out of the experience, and then this would be like a really like cool, powerful story. And I would also be curious to see how you did the flashbacks in this. But yeah, cool. Any other thoughts, comments on this? All right. Yeah, so I think pretty much any of these I think would work. So just kind of like figure out which one y'all are into. All right, so I think we have 3 more groups, it looks like. LARPing Lions. Hello indeed. Yes, the knife Roomba pitch. Please do continue.
Okay, just to clarify, for every single pitch we've labeled the robots as Rob and Bot, and the Eddie pets will be Stabby.
Cool.
Pitch number one is basically two robots chilling at home. They have like a little pet dog that's kind of a Roomba-looking thing.
Yeah.
One of them gets the idea to strap a knife to it for fun, because why not? They do it, and then a cut to a few minutes later when Stabby the Knife Roomba is spinning wildly around the house, and the two of them are leaping over furniture trying to get away from it.
Yep. All right. What's I guess yeah, the tape would be potentially irritating. All right, so we have. He even looks like an aggressive little robot. I like that he's like afraid of his tiny Roomba, which he's tied a knife to.
We wanted eyes that could show fear.
Quote of the day: we wanted eyes that can show fear. Oh wait, are there? Oh, I see. Okay, there's a bunch of pitches. Okay, cool.
Sorry.
It's all good. All right, so yeah, any thoughts, comments on this one? Do I need to pick a random person? Which I'm doing now. Yes, thank you.
Can you go back down to the robot design?
Yeah, first or second one, do you know?
First.
Okay.
Maybe you can make the robots look a little more different from each other. They have kind of similar arms and legs.
Our goal was to make them kind of similar stylistically without being exactly the same. I guess
Like if they were the same brand, but not the same model. If that makes sense.
Gotcha. I kind of see that. I was like, when I first saw these, I was like, oh, these look like they could be just sort of like related, sort of like generic friend bots of a similar type. I also like, it looks like you have some cables kicking around. It's kind of cool. So is there anything that ends up like happening at the end, or are they just sort of like running around trying to not get stabbed?
I guess there's not exactly a resolution other than maybe they knock all their furniture over.
Okay.
Maybe one of them dives to try and like grab the Roomba Stabby and like to stop it from tearing up everything.
One of them can maybe reach it and turn it off again.
Gotcha.
Hand in the process.
Yeah, I think there maybe for this one, I like the premise. It seems, I just watched the Beavis and Butthead movie for the first time like a few days ago, and this just seems like something dumb that they would do, where they're just like sitting there and they're like, hey, like let's tie a knife to this robot, hey, and they like do it, and terrible things happen. But I feel like there needs to be higher stakes or like some kind of resolution at the end. So like, I think at some point you were talking about like having the robot like there was like exposed wires on their ankles, and it would like stab them and basically incapacitate them. Maybe like that happens to one robot, and then the other one like has to come over, and he ends up like, I don't know, putting his hand in front of the knife, and the robot like stabs the hand, and he's like, I will stop you, haha, with my hand blade. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Or like something like that. But I think something like needs to happen at the end, or it's just gonna feel like it ends too early. But I definitely like the premise, and I like the idea where you'd have this like weird montage of them just like running around cowering from this ridiculous Roomba, just like with a knife. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments? Cool. I do think it might not be a terrible idea to maybe like, I would honestly probably find a way to ignore the actual taping so you don't see that in frame, because that does seem annoying. You could do something crazy, like, you know that Grinch montage from like the Jim Carrey Grinch where he like raps and he's like, ha ha ha, and just like doing something crazy? Like, just show a montage of his hands and everything would be super motion blurry and you probably have no idea what was going on, but like, then you could cut to like this Roomba with like a sloppily taped on knife, and that would be a good way to avoid that. And of course, eyes that can show fear. All right, pitch 2.
So this is a robot walking its dog to a dog park. Robot dog.
Yeah.
And then it shows up and it's empty. And so it's just this robot
Okay.
Surprise! Another robot shows up with their own dog, and then the two dogs go and play with each other while they just kind of sit there and watch. And it's cute.
Gotcha. Cool. All right, and are there other robot? Yes. Cool. Is this a spring neck? I like it.
Yeah, you can retract its like head down into its shoulders.
That's funny. What if there's like an alarm clock robot that could like do that, where you just like smash his head in? Yeah, that's fine. Cool. This guy looks so derpy. Like he looks like he was like a Halloween axe murderer. And again, I do mean that as a compliment.
Ideally, the mouths would be stiff, but the eyes would be showing the emotion.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. So grass and dirt, I would recommend dirt. Just sort of like do like a textured plane with maybe like a displacement or a normal map. Grass, you could just do like card grass, and use mash to like populate the whole ground. I think would be simple. Mouse and stem. But yeah. So all right. Any other thoughts, comments on this pitch? I'm calling on a random person. Henry, did I call on you like 3 times already? Okay, if you're willing.
So wait, between these two pitches, are they the same character? Well, I see that the robots are different, but like their names the same, or?
Oh, those were just names between Robot 1 and Robot 2.
Okay.
It's the dumbest way I could think of it was still distinct.
I like it. Alright. I like that you have incorporated dogs into both of your pitches so far. I think that's a good choice. See, that's, yeah, you know, you clearly know what you're doing, so I applaud you there.
Gotcha. So I think my comments for this one are like kind of the same as the second one. I think this one has like a more clear resolution where it's like everybody is sort of happy. I will say, depending on, I saw the one dog design. It looked like sort of like a little cube with wheels, which
It was gonna be a cylinder, but
yeah.
the other one we wanted to make them look very different.
Mm.
What was the name of the things that you were talking about?
So imagine an RC car mixed with like one of those robot dogs.
Yes, I see it.
Boston Dynamics. They have.
Oh,
Boston
those.
Dynamics robot dog.
Yeah. So I mean, most of it, yeah, I know exactly what this is. These are cool. So most of my comments with this would be, I think the design that I saw sketched totally makes sense in terms of like adding extra workload. I would say maybe watch animating a quadruped unless you wanted to do something like this, where it's just like a very like rhythmic way that it walks, if that makes sense. But it's 2 extra robots and one of them is a quadruped.
Also, the other option is having it on wheels, so instead of actually
Yeah.
having a walk cycle, it just zooms around.
Yeah, I think that if you're worried about scope creep, I think I would go with the wheel option, but I do like the idea of the sort of Boston Dynamics dog, because those things are crazy. But yeah, so let's see here. I also think this one could be interesting. Maybe like something weird happens at the end. Like some weird relationship like with the dogs or like with the people. I can think of some weird suggestions, but I'm not, yeah. And also I think would be interesting if you, depending on like how simple the robot designs are, like the robot dogs, to have them playing with each other, it might, like you would need to think of a lot of ways to sort of do motion, like if they can't, because dogs a lot of times like go down on their front legs and like wag their whole butt in excitement kind of thing, and like with certain designs like you wouldn't be able to do that, so how would you sort of compensate for that? I think this would also be a good opportunity to look at different, kind of bring in some like weird funny tropes, like I think you said like the antifreeze in the fridge is like a funny concept. If there's a way to sort of bring that type of idea into a dog park and like find like silly visual gags to add in, this could also make it like more interesting, just like as a sort of like background environment.
An entertaining thing Mary's suggestion was have their leashes be like power outlets to like plug it in.
I like it. What if, okay, I do like that as an idea. So what if the robot dogs only work when they're plugged in. And they like are so excited. The robot dogs are so excited that they like.
Take off and then unplug themselves.
Yeah, and then they just sort of die. Or
Gently walks over and plugs dog back in.
yeah, or like some variation thereupon. But I do like that as an idea where you sort of like combine the, like these are robotic dog creatures, and I think that could actually also provide some interesting plot things. Or the characters like didn't want their dogs to be unplugged, so they were like running around after them, like trying to catch up with them, and then they were like stumbling around or something and just like trying to not unplug their dogs for some reason. But yeah, I like that idea. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments on this one? All right. Wait for it. Pitch 3. Robot builds a friend. Is this Bubble Buddy? Is this the Bubble Buddy pitch?
I guess so.
Okay, so it was kind of funny that you said generic friend bots earlier, because we literally have a generic friend bots pitch. The idea for this one would be like a Rob, a scientist robot, would be working in the lab. Like we imagine it be kind of a very clean, professionally made looking robot, building another one to be his friend.
Right.
He powers it on, and stabbing the Roomba. Not with a knife this time. Just a Roomba. We just called it stabbing for fun. Would wander in, and after the first robot powers on the second one, and is like anxious to meet it. The Roomba like bumps into his leg and knocks the whole thing over.
Oh no.
Robots never walked before.
Yeah.
It's not exactly.
Gotcha.
Robot.
Silence. Okay, cool. And then. Okay.
There's more on the next page.
Oh, yes, good. Cool. So, okay. So what happens to the generic friend bot when he falls? Is he... Because here it just sort of says he falls and then Rob gets scared. Or like he's startled.
So we had one either like bot breaks, or it's just supposed to be comical, and so he like just falls over and like you see him like blinking confused on the floor.
Okay.
So it depends on how sad we want to make it.
We're also honestly just leaning towards the dog park one.
Fair.
Everything back here.
Fair enough. I was gonna say for a funny twist at the end, you could totally do friend bot falls over, does like one of those ridiculous, like over-exaggerated sort of like pirouettes, and like falls into the other one's arm, and he catches them. He's like, "My love." That could potentially be a sort of silly, funny thing. Let's see here. I was also gonna suggest for if is this like a bunch of cables on the arms?
Yeah. So
Sweet.
this is gonna be bot the one that's
Ah.
put together.
Yes,
So
yes.
he's gonna be like have cables like plugged into him because he's like being fired on for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And a whole bunch of exposed wires and like parts that look like they could have come from something else, like in
Yeah.
a joint made out of like a spanner or something.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I mean, I like that you've given him like tiny unstable feet that look like they could be very easily knocked over. That was what I was gonna say, like, when I was looking at these. But I do like his like sort of open chest cavity. It's pretty cool. What the heck?
Very easy to explain.
Okay, part of this was I was tired and thought it was a genius idea at midnight, but I was trying to reinvent Heelys for robots. He has wheels built into his ankles, and he can just flip his feet off the ground and roll around fast.
Your assessment of this being genius was accurate. No, that's completely insane and looks like he's destroying himself, but that is quite funny.
Robots need to confine themselves to how human ankles should move.
Yeah, I quite enjoy this as a concept. Cool. Yeah, so I mean, if you're leaning towards a dog park, I guess we won't spend like a whole lot of time on this one. I think it would be funny if like building off of my silly terrible pitch before and like making your robot dog even more destructive, You could have the Rob catch Bob, or bot in this one, and be like, my love, or some variation, and then the new bot is like sort of hooked up to a bunch of cables for like power because it's a preliminary run, and then you cut back to the little dog bot and he's just like casually going along and he like gets stuck in a cable and he's like meh, 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 and then he like pulls it out of the wall and then the other bot dies. Yeah. I think I just like murdering robots, but yeah, so I think any of these could work. Just maybe go into a little bit more planning of like the details of things. I do still for the dog park really like the idea of like cable leashes. I thought that was pretty cool. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments on any of these? All right. Let's just see here. Ooh. You guys were LARPing lions. All right, so we have cat jesters and then consortium. And then I think that's all of them. All right.
Want me to redo this?
Yeah. Some of the submissions were on accident.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we didn't really like meet until like
Yeah.
yesterday, so.
No worries. So which one should I be looking at then? 5?
Yeah.
Okay. I am at 5.
Okay. So you want to play the first one that we said?
Okay, we have 2 pitches, but we're kind of leaning towards the first one.
Sweet.
All right, so we cut to an opening scene where like cut to an opening scene of fields in the morning. We see a butterfly fly over a hill. A small little robot zips over the hill, chasing the butterfly. It's about to catch it, but then it's like collides into something, and it realizes that it bumps into a giant battery. It hugs the battery in delight, but then suddenly the battery is picked up by something. A giant claw picks it up, and the robot falls on the ground, looks up, and it sees that it's a huge robot that and it looks like it's about to put the battery in.
Oh, yeah.
But then here's the sad world of the little robot because it just lost this prize. The big robot looks sad, realizes what it's done, so it places the battery in front of the little robot, and the little robot is like, me? And the big robot smiles or reassures him that, yes, that is for you. Little robot is happy, hugs the battery, but then, out of nowhere, the little, robot's mouth then opens widely, even bigger than, and just, chomps down the battery, and the big robot is like, huh? And then, it burps, the little robot burps as it just ate the battery, and then it hugs the big robot's leg, and then the big robot with its claw picks up the little robot, puts it on his shoulder, and the two of them head off and become friends.
Gotcha.
So for this, we're thinking it could be in a park setting or something similar. Since the ghosts are off chasing the butterfly, that way it's just really open. And yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And these, I guess.
That's the small robot's design.
Cool.
And I put the large robot's design after the second.
Okay. Let me just scroll down really quick. So this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have a backup idea for this one that might work better. It's more of an Iron Giant Maniacs
Okay.
design. This doesn't work, but it's still gonna have the possible.
Gotcha. My one comment on the robot designs, it does look like they would have the sort of range of motion that you need, but one of the requirements is to be bipedal, so have 2 legs. So I might just sort of take your existing designs and tack on legs. But yeah, cool. All right. So any thoughts and comments on this this pitch? Do I need to call it a random person? Calling out a random person. Where is my mouse? William? Oh, wait. Are you sick with the? Chris said you're sick. Okay, I'll call on someone else so you don't kill your throat. Chris? Like.
No, I keep scrolling through. I'm just trying to get, because the beat sheets, I'm trying to.
Cause what? Oh wait. Sorry, where am I going?
No, I'm just reading because
Yeah. Gotcha.
The story is the small robot finds a battery and launches a butterfly, and it's huge. And its large robot tries to eat it, but sees how sad the small robot is, so it gives it back. And the tiny robot eats the giant battery, and the large robot becomes friends and puts on the children and leaves.
They become friends.
Yeah, you already mentioned about like it having to do with like people.
Yep.
Yeah. The birds be mechanical, or was it just gonna be like regular robots in an organic environment?
Yeah.
That's actually a fair point with the birds in general, whether they're robots or real birds. That is like extra stuff that would need to be animated.
Since now there's gonna be like a player that has a robot, you still plan to make it small enough to be like on the shoulder?
Yeah. So small robot's about the size of a puppy, and the large one's about 7 feet tall.
Sorry, the size of a what? For the large one?
The small one is about the size of a puppy, and the large one's about 7 feet tall.
Okay. Cool.
Have you guys seen the extended version?
For the robot or the pitch?
Sorry, because I think I saw like extended. There was like a couple extra bits
Hmm.
to it, or maybe I just like scrolling down.
I'm sorry if we didn't use the best one.
It's all good. Blackboard Learn is just awkward at displaying things sometimes.
Keep running down.
Alright.
I think it was on one of the other pages further down, like with the robot designs.
Okay. Well, that also might have been like a straight up second pitch, but anywho. So I guess while feel free to keep telling me to scroll up or down. But one thing that I would look at with this one is how would you expand the lower? Yeah, that's a different pitch.
Okay.
So it's how would you expand that little robot's jaw? I do like the idea that he like eats the battery and it's just like he just consumes this giant thing, because the whole time I was kind of like, what is he gonna do with this battery? And you're like, no, he's just gonna eat it, and I do like that. But like, have you thought about how you might sort of expand that jaw
I was thinking
to accommodate it?
I think it's like not on the drawing, but think of like adding like a little bit like if we were to show the picture of where like the mouth is of the robot, add more like a joint to the end to make it like wrap around, so it's like it folds in kind of and like
Okay.
expands all the way up. I mean,
Gotcha.
we've already made like the storyboard for this, so
Gotcha.
if you want, we can show you that.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Recommendation is that if we were just like coming at the corner of the battery, you wouldn't have to show it impinging its jaw as far as you would like other spots.
It's more like a shock value because you didn't think a little robot would be able to do something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think mostly just like I really like it as an idea. Just like make sure that you can accommodate it, because like building like crazy expanding things to like eat that. How big was the battery? Are you thinking? Like I'm picturing like larger than the robot itself.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
larger than the little robot.
Yeah. So just make sure that you have a way that's like reasonably feasible to accommodate that. I mean, you could even kind of tweak it and get like really cartoony with it and do like the sort of stylized thing where like the whole head like gets bigger, where it's just like nyam, and then it just like maybe you literally do just scale the whole head up and like have it grab the thing and like eat it, and do kind of, if you want to get kind of like weird with it, you could do the like weird bird thing where they like go like ah and like shake it down the head as it like scales down. But I think just like again kind of consider how that would be done, because if that doesn't work, that's like kind of the whole sort of funny climax thing of the piece.
You're thinking more of the first idea you said, the sparkling stretch and the whole thing.
Yeah. I think that could be really funny, honestly. Get really weird with like the perspective of the camera, so it's even like more distorted.
Yeah, but we even get to see like the battery being eaten and just zooms on the big robot, you just hear metal crunching, so you're like, what just happened?
Yeah, battery acid everywhere.
If you wanted to do something like really scary with the whole, like really unsettling with the whole like tiny robots actually really terrifying type thing.
It's supposed to be funny, not really scary.
Okay. I was
Remember,
gonna
like
say-
at the end, he hugs the big robot, like he's kind of like one of those across it, but he doesn't want to like on purpose get in fights.
Gotcha.
He's just like a little kid at heart. He didn't know like he was gonna scare the big robot.
Gotcha.
And that's why the big robot likes him when he wants to take him along. He could be a new companion.
I will not proceed with my elder horror suggestion.
It's supposed to be fluff, basically.
Gotcha. Cool. But yeah, I mean, I think the story works. Mostly just like, I guess also look at like how you would do the, watch out for stuff like birds and things. I do like the idea. For some reason, when you said big robot, I was picturing like Iron Giant size, where his head is like legit in the clouds with birds. I think if you just had birds like farther away in the sky for like a 7-foot tall robot, like you said, you could probably actually do like an animated texture and just sort of like have a little card with some like, you know, like a repeating loop of like birds flapping, and that would actually be a way to accomplish that. But yeah, cool. Any other thoughts, comments on this one? All right. And pitch 2 is
Pitch 2
here.
basically, this is going to be more of a robotic city,
Mhm.
and the street is completely empty except for the launch robot, which is kind of going down the street looking for anyone that's still out. And crossing the street is a small robot, totally unaware of what's going on. And the large robot just stops in its tracks when it sees it and starts charging at it to attack it immediately.
Mhm.
So the small robot turns around, sees it, and then runs off back the way it came until it's cornered. And it's just looking around for anything that could help it. It sees this light pole. So it gets the idea to make a shadow puppet to scare away the large robot. So the large robot comes over and it looks around, doesn't see it, sees this big monster apparently, and just backs off and leaves. And the small robot reveals itself and looks very satisfied, just rolls off.
Gotcha. Cool. And then I take it the robot designs would sort of be like shared between.
Yes.
Okay.
Because they work well for both. In
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
very different ways.
Yep. 'Tis true. All right. Cool. Any thoughts, comments on this one? Do I need to call on someone? Yes. Okay. Look, Kai, I can't call you because this is your group. Isabella again?
I really like the concept. I think that just the fact that this has 42 beats would personally concern me. There's kind of a lot.
No, it's the,
Oh, that's
it's
the-
it's
from the other one.
expansion of the previous
Yeah.
one.
Well, even so, I mean, I trust that if you're passionate, you can do it. But yeah, I like the concept. Just, you know, my approach is always like trying to make the most in a little. But I guess a lot of detail can be really good too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like this would be also like a reasonable amount of work to do. I think the worst part about this in terms of workload would probably be the environment. Like as he's fleeing, you would need to make sort of a lot of repeating geometry or like different buildings, stuff like that. But I think it's certainly doable, and I do like the idea at the end of, I was like, oh, like how is this old dude gonna get away? And like the shadow puppet idea, I feel like is such like a ridiculous trope, but it's like kind of cute, and I like that idea. Honestly, and this is probably the one time if I would suggest maybe using the default Maya spotlight, heaven help me, but they make really ugly harsh shadows. So if you needed like a spotlight with a really clear shadow and you couldn't get that with Arnold or Redshift, default Maya spotlight. And just tweak the settings so it looks less terrible. But yeah. But no, I mean, I think this works. I think it's like clear. There's enough sort of like breaks in this where it's like sort of he stops at a dead end. He, you know, looks around and he has like this moment of like, I know what to do. So there's like enough breaks in the motion where I think there's like clear sort of story beats to go from like point A to point B where it like makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think either of these would work. Cool.
We are still biased towards the first.
Yeah.
idea, but we might-
Cool. All right, so it was just the two?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. In that case, Consortium of sleep-deprived students. Or am I attempt 1 or attempt 2? Second? Sorry.
Attempts to.
Huzzah.
We weren't like completely clear on like the position stuff with robot design, so we just included like a set of sketches from when we were working on like a bunch of different pitch ideas.
Gotcha.
Currently I'm working on like different ideations on like the transport version because we like the body form of it.
It is cool.
And stuff not like the traffic and the random one would probably be more fitted towards like different like TDLR prompts we had before.
Gotcha.
Because each of these are essentially like a built up version of like random TDLRs we had.
Right. That makes sense. All right. Do you have a preference on which pitch to start with?
I'll just start from the top.
Which one?
Yeah, we can start from the top. We don't really have a preference. We haven't had much time to talk about it.
Fair enough.
So the essential idea of this one is basically probably a version of the transport robot is just a warehouse worker moving around boxes. Like it's sort of like a Amazon warehouse. When it moves around one and it starts shifting, it opens it and it's like and it reveals like a smaller robot that looks like it's trying to appeal to it to like try and take it away somewhere. And from this point it's like a bit open. Either it can just like throw the box back on it and kind of mull on it and just show interactions with like them thinking about it, or the box can be like moving around more, just like knocking into stuff and knocking stuff down. It could be trying like mining back and forth about it trying to find a home.
Gotcha.
And then the end point can either be it takes it home and the sort of like small afterwards of that, and it's just like, oh well now it's sitting on the couch and it's like doing whatever. Or it could just be like it just sort of looks at it unamused and throws it in an incinerator or something like that.
Well, all right then.
Or combination, it takes it home only to throw it in the incinerator. But that's sort of the general gist of it.
Gotcha. So it's basically just like WorkerBot finds essentially like a smaller stowaway bot, and then the stowaway bot is sort of like, I want home, I want love, and then the other one sort of like decides what to do with him?
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of like the idea where he like takes him home to throw him in the incinerator.
Yeah. Sort of last idea.
It also would be funny if this incinerator was just like a pit in his basement, so it looked like he was just like being thrown into the pits of hell or something crazy.
Yeah, I figured it would look something similar. Just be like a regular tractor factory deal. I mean,
Yeah.
robots have their own thing going.
It's true. You could also make a cage full of tiny robots, and he just like throws them in. Anywho.
There's sort of zoo going on.
But yeah, this is just me being a spaz. So.
Yeah, and then the concerns that I listed were on the initial idea of like it taking home, and I had ideas with with some liquid simulation that could be done, possibly for like boxes falling. I just don't know how to animate couch cushions, so that's just like a thing I'm gonna have to poke at.
Yeah.
And it would also be like it might take a sec since they're like such like different sizes to figure out how they would interact, but yeah.
Yeah. I think those are all fair points. I think the boxes falling you could do with dynamic objects relatively simply.
Yeah.
Couch cushion, honestly, you could do that. You could do it with end cloth. You could also just do it with a blend shape where you just sort of like model a butt dent in the couch, and then you just like trigger it to activate when the robot starts hitting it. And then, so boxes, you can actually rig boxes if you need to, where they just have like one little joint for each flap that just sort of like toggles open and closed.
I just know how to set that up off the top of my head.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really, really easy. Once we go over rigging a little bit more, it should be more apparent how to do that. If it's not and you need to do that, I can totally help you with that. But yeah, anyone have any thoughts and comments on this pitch? Anybody? Shall I call in a person? I feel like I've actually hit everyone like at least twice on my list or something crazy. Kai? So,
We don't have designs for each individual one because we were a bit confused on like what orthographics we're doing. Because I think is there a Friday date listed?
yeah, so orthographics are due like this Friday.
Yeah.
And then the sketches were due like with the pitch.
Oh, okay. I was confused
Yeah.
on that. Okay.
I really like the second one and the fourth one.
These guys?
Yeah. Really could probably have a thing with like a worthwhile.
Theoretically, we could say like use like something similar to transport body for the one moving around, and then the smaller one could be like since it's like a bit more haphazard looking, could be for a smaller one, like smaller robots or like a hobby thing, I guess, with larger robots.
Gotcha. You could also, like, looking at these designs, you could totally do something where, like, what if this hatch thing, like, opens up and it's usually he'll just sort of, like, cram it full of boxes or whatever he's transporting, but it also kind of functions as, like, a makeshift prison for the tiny dude. We're like, because I do like this body design. It's pretty cool. So, I mean, you might be able to sort of, like, play on that and just use that as, like, a way, maybe if it's, like, obvious, like if you're gonna go the route of like the guy destroys him and maybe he's like done this to other robots, he's sort of like a clear plexiglass sort of cover or whatever. He like chucks the little one in, the little one's like all excited, like, oh my god, I found a friend, and then he like sees a tiny hand or something that's just like been ripped off, just like sitting in the guy's like whatever the inside of this thing looks like.
Another idea, that robot itself is the incinerator.
Yeah.
Inside.
No, I like that. That's fun. That's also fun. Yeah. I'm always a fan of things being burned. But yeah, I mean, I think like the basic premise of this is like good and like clear. You just need to find a way to make it obvious like what the smaller robot wants to communicate. Like even if it's something really, really silly where he's just like the SpongeBob thing where he's like imagination and his hands like draw a rainbow. If he was like he drew like a little house and it was like a heart or something, and you could just like overlay.
Probably if it were like in the scenario in which it was knocking over stuff, it could probably knock over like a marker or something.
That's true, yeah. But then you would have to draw with like an animated texture. I guess it's kind of this. Fair enough. But yeah, so I mean, I think just like figure out, I guess, what the ending of this would be, and then if there's a way to maybe like either make it really dramatic. I do kind of like the idea that he's like little robot is just like mulched, and see if there's a way to sort of like foreshadow that ending previously. Like again, if he's gonna like, you know, hold the little guy hostage, like he finds a hand or something weird, or like something else to sort of indicate that like maybe the little one is like kind of clueless and is like unaware, like doesn't notice these signs and is still like trying to buddy up to the big robot. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments on this one? All right, page 2. And yours actually submitted in chronological order. Most interesting. All right.
This whole story basically shows that it's like a generic moving train scene where one robot is like a robber and he tries to like vandalize and hijack the entire train to attempt to like steal it. And the other character is a conductor who's obviously the one controlling it and tries to stop the robber, and they get into like a scrap and like trying with like coal shovels. And specifically, within this story, so in this story, the conductor like hears a noise, which is obviously the robber, but it's like he hears it from behind him. He couldn't like find who this person is, so he checks like the chain who is behind him, and then the robber is on like the ceiling of the main control room, and he like cuts a hole, jumps in, tries to like check the train, and the conductor sees him as soon as he turns, and tries to like grabs his meteorite shell and tries to like attack him, and they go like, and what the robber does is he chucks a shovel full of flaming hot coal at the conductor, and they were like dodging each other's attacks until the freaking Robert jams the freaking control, and the train can't stop. So, and there's like a cliff right there. It's a cliff. So like right before the train like falls off the cliff, they notice that the two robots notice that there's no way to stop the train. So they tend to like die, but they didn't notice there was a cliff there, and when they die, they fall with the train. And that's how it ends off.
Gotcha.
The whole thing just goes to hell.
Fair enough. All right. Any thoughts on this one? Should I call a random person? Mariano?
Can I see the sketches?
No, there weren't any sketches because we were like supposed to use
Throw the graphics.
Yeah, both
yeah,
graphics.
he did say. I guess if we were to use. I don't know.
No, I mean, I'll make my own sketches, but I want to be able to show it in this lecture, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So only Alice will be able to see it.
Fair enough.
Sorry about that.
But yeah.
From this page, I really, first thing that comes to mind, I don't know if it was the movie or not, but I get this SpongeBob vibe where they get lost and they take the movie route, and I really like.
I know what you're talking about.
Wait, which not rock bottom where they go to the. Oh, never mind. Unimportant. Carry on. Sorry.
I don't know, I just find it interesting. Are you drawing any reference from that, or?
No, I'm planning to like look at our designs, and robots, and even I'm like design on the train too, so they all thematic. But if you guys really want to see it, I feel like I can give you guys some of the images if you want to see it. Can we like discuss like the range of motion?
Yeah.
My biggest concerns is I never animated fire.
Yes.
I animated cloth, and that was like impossible for me to do. And I couldn't think to like animate fire. I'm like, no, I have to think about that though. And
As far as environment, we could make it something like a bit more of like like California landscape or just some sort of winter landscape that would require like most dense organic matter.
right,
Yeah.
For, like the surroundings.
so just generate trees.
Yeah, and then
Pretty
like,
much.
for like the cliff scene, we could just use like terracotta or something, just
Right.
make it background.
Right.
Like,
And also the main issue is no fencing.
Indeed.
I like animating stuff, right? So and make it look good. So I think that's for that.
do it like long episode reference for the
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was gonna be my comment, was like, it might be good. Although if these aren't trained sword fighters, you might be able to just like try to hit each other with some sticks. And that could also potentially look realistic unless you're going for like legit trained ninja robots.
Possibly not. I'm gonna like just do like these crazy actions and just swing.
Yeah. In terms of doing like the fire and the other stuff, I was gonna do like a little bit of like sim demo for like in Maya fluid dynamics, which is what you would use for fire. I was gonna do that later in the quarter, so I would say maybe think of ways to not require fire. Like if you wanted burning lumps of coal, you could just sort of like texture them to be emissive and like have, you know, like make them a little bit glowy kind of thing, or make them like cracked with like glowing parts on it, instead of like legitimately smoking and on fire. But yeah, and then I was gonna suggest the same thing as Chris for the background. You could just do like sort of generic mountainy with like rocks and like a few dead tree stumps here and there kind of thing. But yeah, I think, and then
Oh yeah, last one is like I haven't done anything where it's like the settings actually engagement. So constraint things I know, but like I feel like I would get lost in reading the constraints.
I mean, you should actually just be able to sort of parent the camera under the train, and then it would just move with the train.
Right.
So you would want to like for. Usually, I would recommend adding some kind of like jiggle or jitter to your camera. Like if you're on a bumpy train, it'll sort of help sell that idea. But if your camera is moving along with the train, you should just be able to kind of like point it where you want and just add some like motion to it. So that's also something I wouldn't be like too terribly concerned about in terms of like functionally making it work. In terms of the actual story, I think this one also like reads pretty well. Definitely try to emphasize sort of the feeling of danger of like something bad. Like maybe if there's a way where it's like instead of just sort of like hearing a mysterious noise, there's like other small things going wrong that would be like more of a sense of urgency, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Also, like, if the conductor or the engineer person controlling the train, like, the train's, like, all the way up front, and usually the caboose is all the way in the back. So if he notices a sound in the caboose, then, like, this is, like, a really short train or whatever. Like, and I don't think, like, you'd be having a train just carrying a caboose, like.
Fair. I have no idea how trains are set up.
I mean, neither do I, but, like, that just sounds like a really short train. Like, usually you'd want to, like, have, like, a freight or
right.
passenger car or something. Right. It's just in between. But like it, I don't know.
I will say if you want to have a sword fight on a train, usually the most open space on a train is a dining car or something of the sort.
You have to like revise it because you have to.
I like the idea of a fight in the dining car.
Yeah.
I also kind of like that as a premise. But yeah, and then I think so it sounds like maybe like do some sketches of like just sort of like plan out the layout of the train. Just even if it doesn't show up, then you kind of like know what it is and like know what stuff you have available. Maybe the robber guy like picked something up in the dining car along the way to somewhere else, where it would like kind of contextually make sense. It would also be kind of funny if you like these guys jumped off the cliff. They could do that sort of like really like Wile E. Coyote thing where they like suddenly notice, oh crap, we're over a cliff, and then they like drop. I will say if you want to do that, so I know I was like kind of riffing on that in the one previous example from the other week. And then someone was like, it's totally a Wile E. Coyote reference. And I didn't watch Wile E. Coyote, but then we watched some of it and I was like, oh, what makes that work, I think, is the fact that the characters like froze. There was a close-up where they like realized like, oh, I'm over a pit. Like it was very obvious. I looked down, my face is terrified.
Yeah, the other example they show like the character like looking at the camera.
Yeah.
Like drops and it doesn't look that people. So I can't think of that.
Yeah. And then I was like, wouldn't it be funny if the train falls off and then falls on top of them and blows them up? If you're looking for a more definitive ending that sort of like builds on this, I feel like that could be kind of funny. Also, animating mushroom clouds of explosion actually isn't totally terrible to do with Sims. But yeah, I mean, I do feel like this one also works. Last comments for this one? All right. And story pitch 3, I guess, just sort of run through that one quickly.
Yeah, just sort of run through that quick. This is one variation where I was thinking of something of a random haunted house idea with the robot going through. Probably the variation I would use that would be closer would be like the light one I had in the script, which had like a spotlight head. And the idea would be that either it'd be investigating or it was just sort of like going through the house and then it finds a room either with a robot that's unpowered or a sort of random set of lights as its light is turning out and it turns on a hologram and it's of a robot dancing and it tries to work in tandem with it and then the hologram suddenly suddenly the hologram starts interacting as though it were actually there.
Okay.
Flips off the switch. It's like, that was weird. What do these other switches do? Turns it on. There's 5 of them there. It's like, I don't like that. Turns it off.
Gotcha.
That was one variation, and it would involve like, I feel like it would either have to involve some really whack camera angles or a lot of comping, depending on like how they would like interact dancing.
Yeah.
So the other variation was that if it were investigating like an area, it would just turn on the hologram. It would see the robot dancing around, but there would be another robot coming into the scene and try to sort of get in the tussle with it. It would take care of that, and then it would
Okay.
something like that.
Gotcha. So it seems like those two variations are kind of like investigating cop robot, basically like ends threat versus
Haunted house.
right.
Yeah. Which
Okay.
Those were sort of the two variations. I just listed like the hologram.
Yeah.
Which,
I kind of like that one better.
yeah, I like it better. I'm just not too familiar with a lot of like image comping because my immediate idea was to, for the hologram, have it like out separately and then like layer on top with like transparency stuff so
Yep.
that the clipping made a lot more sense.
No, I mean that's pretty much what I would do. Just render that robot separately. You can apply like weird effects to it if you want it to be like strobing or whatever. Yeah.
Are you in game design or animation?
Game design.
Okay.
I thought you were.
Because in Comp 1, which you took in the spring, our first assignment was a hologram. so
I'm just
Of course.
completely unaware of that. It's my immediate thing.
Gotcha.
I'll show you that. I can show you
So,
that.
Okay, so we might have that down then.
yeah.
Sweet.
Okay.
Yeah, I already done the hologram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huzzah.
It was just from my, like I said, we haven't managed to like talk about it for most of the week, so
Yeah, I
that
was
was
scared, so I couldn't even work. Like, I get migraines when you look at a screen.
Ah.
I have to, oh my god. So I
No,
couldn't even use the computer.
so
Been
it's
there.
From game design brain perspective.
Fair enough. But yeah, I mean, I do kind of like the idea of like the hologram becomes like almost sentient and just sort of like starts messing with the other robot and causing mischief. I think that's cute.
So my idea is sort of like suddenly like starts lurching forward
Mhm.
and it just sort of frightens them.
Yeah.
Dash for the flight.
Okay.
Then the static ending was like, what does this do? And then it just sort of looks unamused by the fact that there's suddenly multiple of them.
Gotcha. Multiple holograms?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just like, he's just like, he looks at the light switch.
Yeah, yeah.
And turns it on. It's like 5 of them surrounding, just like.
Gotcha. I kind of like that as an ending where he's just like, he just sort of has control over the robot. So he's just like, let me try it one more time. Nope. And then I kind of like that's kind of like a weird sort of satisfying end where it's just like, it would be funny maybe if the hologram was sort of like terrorizing him and then at the end he realizes like, I can just turn this off. Like I've been in control the whole time. I'm just a dingus and like didn't realize it. Yeah, I mean I think that works as an idea. I think pretty much any of these would work. Anyone have any thoughts, comments, questions about any of these? All right. So I think that was all the pitches that we had. Let me just double check. All right, that was indeed all the pitches. So really quick, I just want to run through the assignments that you guys have next week. We'll take a short break and then we'll go into rigging. All right, so if you look at I love this calendar feature of Learn. It's so fancy. All right, so you will notice that on Friday there are the orthographics for the robot that are due. And that is again on Friday. And then next Tuesday, you have the storyboard for whichever pitch idea you decide to go with, and the first sort of work in progress assignment. I was considering getting rid of this work in progress assignment. Someone told me round B of co-ops is coming up, is like on Friday pretty much or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so stay tuned. For now, assume that you should do work in progress 3. If I decide, I might decide to cancel that in the next like day or so, just because I feel like it's gonna be like a really tiny one. But for now, assume you'll do it. I'll go over it as if you're doing it. All right. So, actually get to the assignments. All right, so for the robot orthographics, I'm not going to go over, there's like all the specs for like requirements for your robot, like the bipedal stuff, which I did go over before, so they're here, and I'm not going to like read them all to you again. But basically the requirements for the assignment itself are orthographics from the front, side, and back of your robot. The ones from the back don't need to be super crazy complicated. You can even design dependent, you can just like copy the front, paste it, and just sort of like erase the face details. Like that's totally fine. I just know some people have like details like battery packs or like specific things in the back of the robot. So orthos from the front, side, and back of your robot, please combine them into a single image. and make sure that all of the pieces are the same sort of height and scale. So like the feet should be on the same plane, the robot should be the same height, hips should come up at the same place, that kind of thing. If you have questions about like what that should look like, you can check out the previous examples of work in the Drive folder. There's a bunch of different other examples of that, which I did show last week. So you can do, again, hand-drawn or digital is fine. Just if you do hand-drawn, again, make sure that the image quality is good. Don't have giant, terrifying shadows and underexposed pieces on your pictures. There's also, if you could just really, really quickly, just take that same range of motion that you need from the whatever pitch you decide to go with, and just copy that in again so I can just like double check your robot makes sense for that. And then there's some like brief character Bible questions that I have that you can also just answer. Again, very briefly, doesn't need to be like 10 paragraphs or anything crazy. But again, here's the character Bible questions. Basically just like, what's the robot's purpose, who made it, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know, they're all here, you can kind of read through them, but they're sort of designed to help you get a better understanding of who your robot is, why it's doing the things that it's doing. It may help sort of inform how you texture your robot. If there's any like obvious scratches or dents, like at least you know how the robot got them if the viewer doesn't. And again, it sort of like helps you plan sizes and stuff like that a little bit better. That's pretty much the orthographics. So character Bible questions is worth 1 point. The range of motion, again, is worth another point. I think I graded this twice, but it is important. And originality of design, as well as sort of like quality of the sketches kind of goes into that as well, is worth 2 points of that. So again, what to submit? Just do a JPEG or PNG or TIFF of your orthographics. They should all, again, be combined into one image. And then just a little PDF with answers to the character Bible questions and range of motion for the robot. Please do not zip anything. They're a pain. Zip files are annoying. And again, just like the most likely thing that I'll probably take off points for if I do is either not including stuff or having like terrible quality hand-drawn images. That's pretty much the orthographics. Those are due on Friday in like 3 or 4 days. Anybody have any questions about that? Yes?
Do they have to be in color or black and white? Or
I do not care if they're in color at all. If you want to, go for it. But I would mostly just say make sure that it's like reasonably... I'm not like a crazy stickler for like you need to, if it's like sketchy, you need to retrace it with like perfect lines. But it should be clear enough and like not smudgy that you could reasonably model from it. My rationale being like, if it works for you, awesome. And if you guys ever do anything for clients, my God, they send you terrible quality images. So it's good practice for interesting real world scenarios and crazy people that you deal with. Any other questions on the orthographics? Sweet. So again, due on Friday. The reason that I have them due on Friday, in case anyone is curious, is hopefully, so the robot model itself is due week 4. So basically 2 weeks from today. So hopefully if you get the orthographics in by Friday, you'll have a few extra days where the designer sort of like approved to basically start modeling it. So you're not crunch time in a week. Because the rig is due week 5, 3 weeks from today. So that's basically sort of why I've set that up the way I did. Apart from that, what else do we have? Storyboards. Yes, storyboards. All right. So this is probably, I assume that like you guys have all done storyboards for other classes before. It's pretty much the same deal as all of those. So this is a group assignment. However you want to break this up, if you want to just have one person make all of the storyboards and submit them for your group, as far as I'm concerned, if you're okay with that, then go for it. You can also split them up and like one person does half. Kind of whatever works for you guys. So this should be storyboards, again, just sort of testing out camera angles, all that stuff. The only hard requirement I have for this is please use some kind of aspect ratio that is similar to like 16:9. You'll be rendering these in full HD 1920 by 1080. So if you give me like square frames, that's not going to be an accurate representation of like what your camera angles and stuff like that looks like. So please do at least choose something close to 16:9 and not like a square. I get squares a lot. which is why I've explicitly written, please don't give me squares. But yeah, so I mean, basically this is just being graded on, one is like the quality of, you know, how well have you rendered this thing? Like, is it, like, literally just the quality of your images? Is it, like, super sloppy of a storyboard? Or have you laid things out neatly? The other 4 points is basically clarity, so it should be obvious what is happening. If you have never heard this pitch before, it should be obvious from the images and whatever notes you have what is happening. And I will say the focus on that is the images and the drawings rather than the notes. The notes should be sort of supplementary. So if you're doing like a sword fight, you shouldn't have, you know, one frame of like swords hitting each other and then like a 5-paragraph description of how the sword fight goes. Like, you should actually draw that out, and again, play with your camera angles, show if you're going to do like camera cuts on the footwork, that kind of thing. But that's pretty much the storyboard. I'm kind of leaving it up to you guys for like how many images you feel like you need to represent whatever you're doing, but you should kind of be proofing, again, like all of your camera angles. If you're going to have a camera cut, that should be a separate image, that kind of thing. What to submit? Basically just a PDF or image sequence that has been, or image that is not, okay. PDF or image of your assembled storyboard. So basically just like take all of your individual frames that you've drawn and just combine them into one image or PDF where everything is in order. If you need to do 2 images, that's fine. Just don't give me like 50 image files. It should be a small enough number of files that you don't need to zip it to reasonably submit it. But that's basically the storyboard. I don't know. Again, I feel like it's kind of self-explanatory, but like, are there any questions on that? Okay. Cool. And then the only other thing, which like I said, I may or may not cancel, is the work in progress assignment. And that is basically, so for this week, it's probably going to be working on your model. In other weeks, it's like a little bit more freeform, but there's not really a whole lot else that you'd probably want to be working on. So in this case, again, assuming you're doing modeling, just make a list of whatever you've been worked on, like what I should be looking for, and then probably you would want to submit like an OBJ or a Maya file with whatever robot stuff you have been working on. If you could also, for this one, submit your orthographics as well, just like double that up so I have them there. I can sort of like check how similar things are going. That would be lovely. And again, this is just sort of graded. It's not like, it's mostly graded on like, does it look like a reasonable amount of work? So assuming that this assignment is a thing that is actually due and I don't cancel it, I'd be hoping to maybe see like some well fleshed out like arms, legs, like maybe like a piece of the torso, like pick a limb and like the torso of your robot kind of thing and like do that. I'm certainly not expecting like the whole robot or anything like that. An example of like minimal work of less than ideal quality is would be like, here are 3 spheres kind of clipping through each other, and like this is my robot. So again, ideally kind of like block it out in some way that is actually usable later. Yeah. And then kind of like what to submit, again, for these is a little bit subjective because like it depends what you're working on. For this one, probably an OBJ or a Maya file and like orthographics. And then the list of stuff that you worked on. That's the work in progress. Anybody have any questions on that? Yeah.
Did you add orthographics to the list?
Yes. And cool. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the only place I mentioned that. But yes. Anything else? All right. Really quick, I'm just gonna like, so these are, as the assignment mentioned, they're submitted as journals through Learn, which functionally looks the same as an assignment basically when you're submitting stuff. But really quick, so I'll just, that is not what I wanted. So like, this is basically what it looks like if you go to create a journal entry. You just hit create journal entry, type in whatever you want. If you want to attach files, this is where you would do it, and then just hit post entry whenever you're done. It'll show up here. And you can, if you want, like add comments to your post. If you forget a file, you'll just need to make a new journal entry, and then just go ahead and submit that, and they'll all just sort of show up like this. So again, for you guys, it should function pretty much like submitting an assignment. But yeah, that's pretty much how those are. And so again, Work in progress and storyboards due next class, orthographics due on Friday. Any questions on any of the assignment stuff? All right, go be free for 5 minutes, come back, and then we'll do some rigging.